Hey guys, welcome to Steph's podcast. This is episode 59, and today we have a very special guest with a very inspiring story about ADUs. I know that most of the time I'm talking about, and I'm having very good professionals talk about the intricacies of the process and what the timelines look like and what the legislation updates are like. But we wanted to switch it up on this episode and really give people the why, right? Why people are building them, and hopefully this can, I don't know, maybe a lot of you can relate to it in some way, shape, or form, and you walk away inspired just like I am. She's a great friend of mine, and I had the pleasure of meeting her not that long ago, and so it's great to perfect timing to have her on the podcast. Her name is Lakisha, and I'm gonna also give you guys a quick bio. So while planning for the next phase in life as empty nesters in retirement, Kisha and Noah Mellor received the news that two of their three adult children had incurable diseases. The family's priorities shifted and their focus became preparing for the worst case scenario. So with no savings, Kisha devised a solution using their family home and an ADU to supplement their income. The plan accelerated their retirement fund and ensured they could provide or pay for permanent housing for their adult children, should a medical emergency ever happen. And in January 2024, the couple completed their fifth ADU build, essentially converting their single-family house into a fourplex. The success of their recent house hack has demonstrated that when coupled with ADU home ownership is a powerful investment tool. Kisha enjoys sharing the story, and I'm super grateful to have her here. And we're going to dive deep into everything that I just mentioned, but I will hand it off to her. Thank you so
Well,
much.
well, Steph, thank you for the intro, and I'm grateful that to be invited and to be able to share our story. I think a part of the challenge when we're each kind of living our lives is that experience that we're alone. And by talking about our story, I've met so many families who may not have the exact same situation, but have challenges
Right.
and either inspired or we're kind of building off of each other and connecting so that we can support each other through some really challenging times, but still like live very fulfilled and happy lives, content, peaceful lives with what's happening around us.
Yeah, and both of you and I are very involved in the ADU world, but people don't really talk about the inspirational or the sense of community that you need when you get started, because there's so many moving pieces. You have to know about so many things when you're building one, let alone making all these decisions and finding inspiration and motivation on how to go about it. So it's great that you've been able to connect with a lot of people and create this sense of community. That's what I've been able to do as well with my platform and just building community. That's all I want. I just want people to connect and share what they're doing, what's working for them, to help their families and vice versa, right? And so one of my first questions for you was, what inspired you and your husband to explore the idea of using ADUs? Like, how did that even come to mind?
Well, I've always been a stay-at-home mom, and living off of one income has always been super tight, especially in the Bay Area. But it was a decision we made at some point when our kids were young, and I would always search for ways to make money from home. Like that was like I need to be able to like drop the kids off and make some money. I don't know why, like realtor, I'm fairly like shy at first. So realtor never stood out for me, but now it kind of seems like of course I should have been a realtor. But
Right.
yeah, exactly. At some point, though, I stumbled on like this list and listed rent out rooms or um, convert a garage to an apartment. That was like 2016.
Okay.
ADUs in California were just taking off. Of course, we had seen those units for in like more expensive neighborhoods or illegal units, right? So we
Mhm.
all knew and heard of them as like an in-law unit. And then two things happened. We started to realize that our daughter, had something going on with her in her senior year, and she was obviously sick. And, the doctors are testing her, her joints are swelling, there's all these things happening. She's sleeping all the time. And I've seen autoimmune diseases. And I kind of knew in my gut, like, okay, she has an autoimmune. We just, don't know which one yet. And that takes a little while to diagnose. And then my sister had moved to China for about 5 years, and she wanted to come back home, but was just priced out of the Bay Area. Like there was no way she could afford an apartment if she came back. And those two things, I started to think like, okay, I didn't understand the potential yet of an ADU, but I knew that I could house my sister. And the little bit of change, we first charged her $500. That little $500 would kind of like help Noah and I with some expenses. At this point, I didn't see the vision. I just knew like I could help my sister and we could get $500. Our daughter was about to go to college. And that would be some extra money since we didn't have a plan for college. And then the following year, we were finished the ADU. Our son, there's something weird going on with him. He's very depressed and just a host of symptoms that signaled a serious mental health issue. And we get him, tested by our neural psychologist. And I kind of just like fall apart because now I have these two kids that are really sick. And we actually still don't know what's going on. And I think I stay like that for about a year. My sister's in the studio. I'm pretty hopeless. Noah's pretty hopeless. We don't know what to do. And that goes on for that year. And then at some point it dawns on me, like really sadness is a signal, or fear or anything is a signal that you need to take action. Right.
100%.
Right. And that is when I started to think, well, what is the action that I need? Education, right? So I joined all the groups to get educated about the condition that the kids were that being potentially diagnosed with. And then the next one was we had to prepare financially. And that's when I kind of started to formulate a plan for the ADUs. And we only had the one garage at first. And then I was like, Noah, hey, the kids have a playhouse that we don't really use anymore. Maybe we should turn that into an ADU too. And he didn't really see the vision for that one because it's 150 square feet.
Oh, wow.
And nobody's going to pay us for that. And so that's when I learned about doing market analysis. So then I went online and I started to like look for what the market, what a small studio would rent for, and
Right.
see, you compare in different what features I had to have, what could I do without. And sure enough, I looked and a bedroom was $900. So my studio could definitely compete. My market, I'm going to 900 and I have plenty of room from there after the 900, and it's an existing structure. So that was our second one. And from there, that's when I started to really figure out like, oh, this has a potential to really help us. Because without those first two, we really were going to be living paycheck to paycheck while our daughter was in college. And if she gets sick or if our son gets sick, there's no safety net in this country. There's nothing that saves you if someone gets sick. So if someone gets sick, it's up to the family to step in. And if you can't afford that, then we are all hunkered down in the house together and kind of have this existence that may or may not be really healthy for everyone.
Wow. Yeah, that's very, very touching because I have a 10-year-old. You met Alex at the event, and just thinking, right, as you're saying the story, I'm picturing him older in life, and then all of a sudden you hear this news and it shifts your entire world. But I got to give it to you for being so resilient, because what you said just now about fear, all these low vibration emotions really trigger you. And I'm learning how to use them to my advantage, which is taking action, right? Like, don't sit in that emotion for too long. Feel it out. Yes, it was, kind of fucked up to hear that, but you took action. Like, you digested the information and you said mom mode, right? You got into mom mode and hero mom, and you're like, what can I do for these kids to prepare myself? And honestly, it's almost like these things that happen in your life, you probably wouldn't have thought of this had that never ever happened, right? Even though it sounds messed up to say it, but like, had
It's
you never
true.
heard that, it never puts things into perspective for your future. Now you guys are on a roll, right? Now you guys are looking at ways to scale this as a true business, when it all started because of, the family situation. And so now, how did you get to like the fifth one, and how did you finance these projects throughout?
Right. So, once we are, that's the smaller one at the top rents for about 1,300. Then my sister moved out, and that's like the two of them. I was like, whoa, our house that we raised our kids in is cash flowing like $3,000 a month, like just like that, off of 2 units. And at the same time, COVID happened and Noah needed to work from home. And as I'm watching him work from home, I just realized like how stressful his job is and how stressed out he is. And like, I just felt for him. And like, on top of that, we have the thing with our kids. And I'm like, oh my God, this guy is going to have a heart attack. And I'm a stay-at-home mom and I don't know what I'm going to do. So I said, you know what? I think that we should rent out our primary house. And he's like, well, where are we going to live? And well, all their kids are gone. They were each doing their own things. And I said, we could just live in a van. And I started to like learn all this stuff about living in a van. And I was like, it doesn't have to be permanent. Like we could just do it for a little while so that you could take a break and we could
Right.
use little cash flow and kind of give us the time to like decompress, process everything that we've just gone through over the last couple of years. And then you can go back to work whenever whenever we need you to. And so we did that. And as we were on the road, our son's condition started to decline really quickly. He ended up in a hospital. And all three of our kids, even with their illnesses, are super independent and they really give it a good go. Like, like I think sometimes people hear my story and they think, well, aren't those kids able to take care of themselves? And they really do. They really do a great job, most of the time within the framework, considering that they have illnesses that are really
Right,
heavy
that they have to live with. Yeah.
like they have to live with and manage. So our son at some point just couldn't manage anymore. So we, look for a market that we could afford, because remember, Noah's unemployed at this time. And
Right.
we've been traveling to Baja and having a good old time during COVID. And we only have this income from the houses now, that's passive. That's our only source of income. So we partner with my mother-in-law, who's kind enough to help us just with her income. We just needed income, not necessarily anything else, just on paper, someone to help us get the second place. And the only market that we could go into was Sacramento. That was the only place that we could afford. And we got lucky and saw a house that had alley access. At this point, we've like been
You already know what to look for.
like what to look for. Where are the connections at? The lot size, because we were working with a lot that's under 5,000 square feet in the Bay Area. So we really were limited and we made it work. And so we knew let's how big. Sometimes people, when you're trying to stretch your dollar, you go further out of town. For our business model, because we focus mainly on midterm rentals and nurses, traveling medical professionals, we really didn't want to go too far out because we wanted to stay in the Sacramento central area near a hospital. So we had all those things, those criteria that we go out looking for. And sure enough, it probably took us less than, I don't know, I want to say it was less than 3 months. And we found a house. After we had been on the road for about a year off and on, we found that house. And we got an R2. That's the really cool part of this story. I would love to say that we were geniuses and we knew to look for an R2. We did not know to look for an R2. And in fact, Sacramento no longer allows you to put one junior ADU and 2 ADUs on any lots anymore. They've just done away with it. So you can have your 2 ADUs. They're really generous in that way, but you can't even do it. So we were able to build one technically junior, which they don't even call it that. It's not deeded or anything. And then 2 other ADUs on that property in 2 years.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
And you leverage the equity from the other house, or?
Again, so we ran into some obstacles, and this is a good topic because I don't think people realize even though we had the passive income, If you're not employed, or you
Right.
don't live there, that's the other one. If it's a rental property, there's a different debt to income ratio,
Mhm.
right? So we weren't able to leverage the equity. At least we decided not to, because the interest rate, with all the things that came together, it would have been too high for us to, like, we didn't feel like it was worth it. So we used, Noah went back to work after we purchased it. But in the meantime, we used 0% credit cards. So that's the first way that we got into that property. We had a savings, and 0%
Mm.
credit cards allowed us to build out on the property. And once he went back to work, it was his W-2 salary and the 0% credit cards.
That's a very smart way. It's very smart play to do it because typically they give you what, like 12 months, 24 months, zero interest, somewhere in that range. And if you do it within the right time frame, once you know, then you probably won't get that credit card until plans are approved, right? Like typically if you have money for the plans approved, then you just go through that, pay the 5 to 10,000 for the plans, and once that's approved, then you start figuring out where you're going to finance, how you're going to finance the project. How did you guys tap into the MTR strategy? Like, did you? I'm assuming because long-term rental just doesn't cut it, right? So you're looking at, well, how can I maximize the rental? But how did you land into travel nurses and that space?
Yeah, I want to back up. I'm going to get to how we landed on MTRs, but I want to talk about if you use 0% credit cards. If you
Mm-hmm.
plan to use 0% credit cards, you have to be very strategic about it. Like Steph said, you don't want to pull it out before you have to. And ideally, you want to wait as long as you can in the construction process. So exhaust the W-2, your savings, do as much as you feel comfortable with there before you pull it out. We didn't exactly do that. And the problem is, if you go to try to pull out equity after, and you've got all this credit card debt, you want to kind of do it strategically so that you can avoid having that hit at the same time. This big, debt to income, increasing your debt to income ratio. So that's one thing I want to caution. And then for NTR, I was listening to Bigger Pockets, while we were in our family home before this even kind of occurred, all the stuff occurred. And I would hear about, if you're a new landlord, if you're thinking about it, try midterm rentals, because the entryway is it's a little easier. You're working with a population of professionals that are going to be, they're vetted by their
Agencies.
agencies. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so they're recruiters. They already have background checks. They have schedules. They have to go to work. Like, they're not like going to be next door to us partying and partying it up in our backyard. And so that's really how I landed on NTR. It wasn't for our spaces. They're not like 150 square feet or 255 square feet. I was getting 1,500 and 1,300. It's not a whole, lot of money in comparison. It is a lot for what it is, but
Right.
really the safety net there was that I could have you at our family home and feel comfortable with who I'm renting to, while I get really good at screening people, right? And I still would say for any, homeowner that's looking to rent a space, you want to get good at screening and knowing what the law is before you go and, have someone rent your place, because this is serious business. This is your, largest investment, and you don't want to just trust it to anyone or have someone, manipulate the law and try to take advantage of you. So that's
Exactly. That's always like the biggest fear for people. And I think I'm all for MTRs. You probably heard the Bigger Pockets episode with Jesse, who's a really good friend of mine. And I've had him on the podcast. And he's been able to scale this business in Modesto, which is like up there. And it's a very hidden gem, right? Because it really caters to travel nurses. But I think with him, the advantage was that he worked in the medical field for years, so he really understands how these agencies work and how good they do at vetting the tenant. Because I'm involved in I do long-term rentals, and so I have an idea of what the midterm, because we do a couple midterms, but we're still learning in the process, like how much do we charge for deposit versus a long term. But I would say for anybody out there who's looking to vet a tenant, you have to get very good at screening the paperwork and the person as a whole, right? and who they're bringing in, and making sure that everybody fills out an application, making sure you have minimum requirements for FICO score. Like for us, you have to have a minimum FICO score of 620. You have to make 3 times the amount of income. You have to show pay stubs. You have to show bank statements. You have to pass your rental and background check. And so I think if you do all those things, you're in a really good position to hire or to find a good tenant. You can't screen crazy, like I said at the event. So sometimes life situations happen. Like some of these tenants that you have in your house could have a situation where, like you had yours with your kids, right? Things
Mm-hmm.
happen. Some of these tenants may have some life situations, divorce, sicknesses, illnesses, whatever, and it's out of your control, but you kind of have to know, like, well, what can I do to prevent, that from happening? And if it does happen, what can I do to protect myself? So we do work with another company that is a third party company that offers 2 months of rent protection, but there is a monthly fee for it. And I always tell my landlords, like, you should pay these $45 a month, because it includes a lot of stuff like pet protection, eviction protection up to $1,000. And we also offer that rent protection, because if a tenant needs to be evicted, or we need them to move out because they're having life happen to them, then at least you're secured for those 2 months in the meantime, while you find a new tenant, or while you go through the eviction process, which right now in Orange County, it's taking 3 to 6 months. So all these things you have to know. And I think most people, I was on another call before this, you put a lot of thought into building it, but when you are getting ready to rent it out, it's a whole different ball game with the management piece of it, whether it's midterm, short term, which short term is a very gray area, right? Because with ADUs and short term, it's not
Mm-hmm.
really allowed,
Mm-hmm.
or long term, whichever route you go. Like, you have to just make sure you feel very confident in the space, or reach out to community. And so a lot of these Facebook groups help with that too, and figuring out what people are doing to vet the right ADU people, ADU tenants. So reach out to us if you need help with that. I mean, Kisha is definitely on her way to becoming a property management expert. So with that, I mean, I know you have turnovers. You guys are self-managing at this point for all 5 doors.
Mm-hmm.
And
So
how's
yeah,
that going?
yeah. So it's 8 doors total. So each the three at the
Oh, that's
first,
right. 5 ADUs plus.
uh and then the other properties, and we have a condo in Long Beach, which doesn't need a lot of management because our daughter stays there. That was like one of our goals, was to be able to get her a place, and if she gets sick, can't go to work or whatever, she pays rent. But if it happens that she can't for some reason, she's in a good spot and we can be flexible.
Mhm.
Um, for the other ones, I will say you cannot screen crazy. You can't, but you can ask some questions that are legal. And there's a way in which I do it that really helps you to get a sense of who that person is. They're legal questions. But if the person doesn't feel comfortable with you asking those questions, like, where are you coming from? How long do you want to be here? But just up front, then it kind of signals to me that they might not be a good person for me to work with, mainly because I am self managing. And especially when I got started, I wanted to make sure I had people who really were easy to work with, So
Right.
if you're kind of like one of these high maintenance, travelers, I'm like, okay, be
What's not
well.
gonna work? Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I hope you have a great time, because I knew I had a lot to learn. So I'm much, now I trust myself a lot more. I've learned a lot, but if you're just getting started, ask those questions that are legal. If you don't know questions are legal, search legal questions in California to ask a tenant. And there's a list that'll come up, and pick, 5 or 6 of them that you think are important, and send it to them and ask them right away at the first meeting, because that'll kind of be an indicator of what kind of person they are. If they can answer those questions without feeling kind of put off, then like, okay, first we at least have that kind of rapport and know, like, no, I'm trusting you and I need you to like honor that trust in some way.
And you're asking these questions on top of the fact that they've already been vetted by the agencies as well.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
So
good. I mean,
yeah.
that's good. I know a lot of people who focus in the Section 8, for example, a Section 8 world. And even though they're vetted by the Section 8 agency, they still will screen them. So it doesn't hurt. And that's a great advice, is to do the double work, right? And have them just double vetted as many times, like just so that you feel comfortable, especially when you're self managing. I can't stress that enough, because management companies, we have to stay updated with fair housing. We have processes in place. We have some AI technology that helps us detect fraud with documentation. But single family owner operators don't have that, or many times you don't have like the experience. So there is a bit of a fear there, in finding like the right tenant, for the certain amount of time. What advice would you give to other homeowners considering utilizing ADUs as an investment tool or income supplement?
I can't stress enough like education, and then getting, and not just, there's a lot of information out there. Watch and listen to all Steph's podcasts,
Yeah,
um,
right.
find find groups, talk to people, join the Facebook groups. In addition to that, go to Bigger Pockets, whatever you got to do, find the information on becoming a landlord if you're going to self-manage. For actually building the ADU, one of our strengths is that Noah has a network of construction workers because he
Mm.
works in construction. So without us even knowing, it's like his superpower. And also, he has some reference points when people are quoting jobs for him, which over time, like I'm learning more and more, like, oh, that sounds good. This doesn't. Not everything on like the ADU duplex, we didn't do everything. Um, he did do the electrical, but like sheetrock taping and mudding, we like 1,000 square feet. We're not going to tape and mud 1,000 square feet. That's really
Right.
hard. We wanted smooth finishes, so we contracted that out. Get good at deciding what you can handle and be honest about what you can physically handle,
Right.
because it's a physical job, like, and we're in our, I'm in, late 40s, like, no, like it's a physical job. Some days you can, like, you walk away sore. So, acknowledge like you're not going to be able to DIY everything. I think garage conversions are definitely the go-to if you are a owner builder. Don't, I mean, I know that, for people who build ADUs, for professional contractors, that they would prefer a new structure, but for owner builder, try the garage conversion first, or at least, have done some major kitchen remodels or something. Like, you've had to done something before you go in there and start just trying to build an apartment in your.
And even from a financing standpoint, right? Like garage conversions are the lowest barrier of entry. You don't have to, you know, when you're doing new construction, you really don't know what you're going to walk into, and many times it's a lot more expensive. So doing the garage conversion is the lowest barrier of entry. It's the best way, as she said, to do owner builder, because you're really kind of just working with existing walls, right?
Mhm.
And you're just kind of working with it within that. Those are all great points. I think 100% the fact that Noah has construction background was the reason why you guys have been so successful with the doors that you guys have. You guys probably would have spent more money, had you not known enough about construction, because as we know, that's a whole other topic. But one of the reasons why I tapped into ADUs was because of shitty contractors and scammers. And that's a big thing out here in LA. I don't know about the Bay Area or Oregon, but when I spoke at the ADU Academy, they were like, the people that were coming from Oregon, they're like, we don't really deal with that. I'm like, out here, you do. There's a lot of people who say they're in the business for helping people, or, that they know what they're doing, but they will leave your job halfway finished and you'll never hear from them again. So understanding who you work with, and as you said, kind of pick and choose what you're good at and what you're not, and be okay giving that up, because this isn't just, people think that an ADU is like a small little conversion. You're really going through like almost like a custom build process of building a new home in many cases. So that's really, really good insight. I got one more for you.
Mhm.
Beyond the financial benefits, what has been the most rewarding aspects of operating a successful midterm rental business and sharing your experience with others?
Well, I guess there's layers to that. One, for
Right.
me, as a stay-at-home mom, I kind of started off being kind of, I didn't have like a lot of confidence in what I could accomplish. And I actually would say, like, I'm just a stay-at-home mom. I would say it all the time. And at some point, something clicked in crisis. And I realized, like, no, as a stay at home mom, I have a lot of strengths. That's how these kids are staying alive, right? Like, I'm doing a job here, and those strengths are transferable. It actually made me really good and intuitive at screening people and thinking, like, okay, what's the next step? Super organized.
Right.
I can figure out these steps for becoming this midterm rental host. So that was one of the things that helped me tap into like another level of confidence that I didn't have before. And then community, like we do feel embraced in a part of a community. And that's why I appreciate being able to talk to other people. I do want to add something that we don't often talk about, and I hope it's okay. So, but I kind of want to say this because I do a lot of these podcasts or interviews, and I often don't even think of it, but I want other people to know that it's out there. Right now, as it stands, if you build two ADUs on a property, on a single family home, and you try to sell it, that person that wants to buy it cannot qualify for a loan right now. This could change, like FHA's rules. I think
Right.
it's might, and they could do conventional, maybe. Is that, or what do you?
Maybe because you are building an HOA when you're selling it off. And so FHA is very hesitant, but they're going to have to relax some of these laws in order to make it happen. So I don't see the AB 1033 going anywhere until the next year because it's like the state said, sure, you can sell it off, but you're on your own. Like, and you got to figure it out with each city on how they're going to run it. And right now, that I know of, only Santa Monica is the only one that's kind of raised their hand saying, sure, we're willing to sell it. But the financing, we don't even know. We don't even have financing for ADUs, let alone, try to sell one. So it's still a far ways out, but I agree.
Right. So that goes back to that piece where like education, get the education. Because before we did the second build, we understood, like, yeah, when we put 3 of these on here, that's it. We have to hold this until that changes, because we can't just try to sell it. That's not an exit strategy. We wouldn't be able
Right.
to sell it in a conventional way. We'd have to, do a deal with someone or something. So if you're looking to flip this, don't do that. That's not the
No, it's
strategy.
definitely not a flip strategy. That's something that I tell people. This is a long-term buy and hold type of investor.
Right.
There's two types. You're either flipping or you're buying and holding for long-term or long periods of time to possibly maybe what you could do at some point. If you guys have 8 doors, you could sell that off as a portfolio and do a 1031 exchange for a 10 unit building where you can now add 4 ADUs to that 10 unit, right? And some of these multifamily rules are becoming a lot more lenient to where now they're kind of matching it. So you would be able to do maybe 4 to 6 ADUs on a 10 unit and turn that 10 unit into 16. And now you have all your doors in one spot and you don't have to run around from place, to place. And it's a much better model, especially for agencies. Like I know Jesse is kind of looking into that because a lot of these medical agencies or recruiters are looking for people who have more than one house. So if you have 10 units, it's like bring me 10, 20 nurses. And
Right.
now you have a whole operating business from one building and you can sell that building with the business, which is worth more. So I think for you guys, I can totally see you owning 10, 15, 20 units at some point if you do the 1031. And a 1031 is your best route because you get to defer those taxes as long as you hold it. So again, the ADU strategy is a buy and hold. It's not a quick fix and flip type of deal. Unless the process with the city gets better, and it's more streamlined. And if you're able to build it and get plans approved in 6 months, then I could see a lot of flippers doing it. But right now, realistically, it's just not with the time frames. So yeah, that's that. Well, that was my last question. I did also want to give you a shout out for helping me create this community of ADU women And we have a ADU Women's Mastermind every month. We do it once a month. Lakisha, Darcy, and I. Darcy, I also had on the podcast, and she's doing ADUs out in Vegas. So all three of us came together and said, let's build confidence. Because back to your confidence situation that I think all women have as stay-at-home moms. I'm technically, you could say, a stay-at-home mom, right? I work from home, I homeschool my kid. Like, I am a stay-at-home mom as well, but yet it helps me so much in everything that I do. And I think they don't give stay-at-home moms the credit that they deserve, because we really should be walking around very confident in the space, because we learn so much being at home. And you were really the visionary, and I think your husband was the one who helped you implement the vision, but you came up with that vision. So shout out to stay at home moms, because we do a lot more than people think. And running the operations and the business really helps you. And a lot, like you said, a lot of those skills are transferable in life. And it's so nice to see you, like, your kids are grown now you have something going for yourself, and empowering other women and giving them confidence, and doing it together. So if you are a woman who's listening to this and you're wanting to tap into ADUs and you don't know how to get started, join our monthly calls, get inspired, feel a sense of community. There is what do we have, like a no stingy energy
Yeah.
rule, and a have fun with it rule. We just want to empower other women in the space because it's needed. I think there's a lack of women, and a lot of it is just confidence, because they don't see women like you and I on these stages or on these, conferences and spaces or construction spaces. All you see is men. And so the more they could see women like you and I, the more inspired they'll be, and they won't have as many limited beliefs as we all do, because I still do. So, and it's crazy because people think I don't, but I do.
And I just want to thank you, because I've sent the message and was like, oh my God, Steph, you're so amazing. And you're like, girl, get on this call. Let's do this thing. And I love the energy, just like, let's collaborate, let's build something, and appreciate it. Like, that's so encouraging, because I don't always get that sense in certain spaces, not ADU space, just everyone, everyone from Florentine, from Sidekick Homes, just like very embracing and super encouraging. And any limiting belief, let's slash that and get rid of it. Just always like focused on sharing the platform and knowledge with everyone. So thank
Yeah,
you.
because there's enough to go around for all of us. And I think it's really just that lack of confidence that holds us back from doing so much. We could do a lot more. And you saw it at the event. Like, I need it. The next event, I really want to have all women up there speaking. So we need more women to come up and just share what they're doing, and not be stingy with the energy, and help someone else. And as you said, a lot of the women that we have in these groups are people that are very powerful in the ADU world. Florentine has been great, and a lot of other women on there that we've been able to bring on. So feel free to tap into that. And any other closing thoughts you'd like to share before we wrap up?
No, just thank you for having me. And of course, you can reach out to me on Mellor Moves if you have any questions, want some advice on property management, or ADUs and being owner builder. I'm also working on building some relationships with builders in NorCal, so that we can have a list of trusted builders that we feel comfortable with working with.
100%. And we may even have to do an event up there and really get these trusted, vetted people to come to us, and then they can send them your way, and you can start building your network out there. So awesome. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Kisha, for everything that you do for the community and for your friendship. It's awesome to have you in my circle. Like I tell you all the time, I'm super grateful. And yeah, you guys will see this on Spotify, YouTube, everywhere. And we'll see you on the next one. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.